Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, from Taos, New Mexico. Welcome as we take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions today on this Monday. We'll get started with a smile and some good questions, no doubt, as we get together, sit around. Maybe you got a cup of coffee and you're questioning the assumptions mug. You've worked on growing your African violet. Mine are coming along. They were awfully sickly for a while. I think they got the corona flu or something, and but they're perking back up. A little ivermectin, and boom, here they are, ready to go. Hope you're perked up too and doing well today, and that you had a good weekend, and maybe joined us for what I think is a very important sermon, and that is the essential gospel. Had that yesterday. You can go on and listen to that if you have not done that yet. And the study on 2 Peter. We finished up 1st and 2 Peter. And I didn't announce. I'll go into Jude this Sunday since, it's right there in the neighborhood, just a short chapter, also a Hebraic epistle, and we'll take a look at Jude on Sunday mornings. We're looking at Titus on Thursday nights, 1 John still on Wednesday nights. So all sorts of good stuff going on, and I hope you'll join us. And let's see. I don't have the picture up, but evangelical garbage. I'm in the process of going through the editor's edits, and I think another week or so we'll have it available for pre-orders at least, and I'm guessing probably go about the first of February. So exciting times here today, and let's get to the right one. There we go, because we're gonna head down to Oops. Train leaving on track. Sorry, that belongs to Michael. We are going down to San Antonio. There we go, and we are going to start out the week with the Padre of Old San Antonio, our friend Manny down there, who says, "Did Jesus know the revelation of the mystery only after he sat at the right hand of God?" Thanks again. I think so. I think that you've really got to take that position with, I don't know. Let's take a couple of passages here and take a look. Didn't have my scripture up here this morning. It's Monday morning, starting over again. I try to turn the computer off once a week and reset everything. But in what is it? Colossians. Well, I always forget this verse here. How do I forget the verse? And it's my search is a little slow. In Colossians chapter 1, it says that this mystery was not known as it is now known. That is, it was not known at all. And I would rather give you a clean quote on that. And as let's go to Ephesians 5, and then we'll follow the cross references to the Colossians verse I want. How about that? Ephesians chapter 3, verse 5. "The mystery which in other ages was not made known unto the sons of men, as it is now revealed." Now it's now revealed through Paul. He says this earlier in the chapter. Now through Paul revealed to holy apostles and prophets, which exist in that day. And this is a new thing. Now, some people take "as it is now revealed," and they take that to say, well, it was revealed, just not as much. Now we know more about it. I think that that is Colossians 1:26 is where we go. That is refuted by Colossians 1:26, which says, "Even the mystery which hath been hid from ages and generations, but now is made manifest to his saints." Now, if indeed the mystery was hid from ages and generations, And it is everywhere you see it. It was made known by God the Father to the Apostle Paul. Now, if that is the case, then I think it is. I think we even have to include Jesus Christ not knowing about this. This would have to do with the emptying in Philippians chapter 2, that he emptied himself and took on the form of man, that he doesn't know anything unless the Father tells it to him. So it obviously is a little bit of a speculation here, but I see nothing in the words of Jesus that give any hint of the coming age of the church, so to speak, or dispensation of the grace of God. Now, some people would take, say, a Matthew 16, upon this rock I will build my church. And so many of that, starting with the Catholics, there's the one that got the idea started, so many of them will say, okay, here Jesus was predicting this assembly that we are in which case he would have to know about it. Now, everyone who uses it that way doesn't even know about the mystery or believe the mystery. They think that, the church is the new Jerusalem or something like this, the new Israel. And so they're utterly confused about that and so many other issues. I think that, I wish there was chapter and verse where I could show you and totally say so, but I think that we've got to take Paul at his word that it was not known. So, did Jesus know, what did you know and when did you know it? This is the issue for Jesus here. I think that if he knew it, he certainly also kept it a mystery. I think Jesus, while he was here on this earth, did empty himself of his divine knowledge and only knew what the Father was telling him, and the Father did not tell him that. I think that if we were to... let's say we were to have a congressional trial, congressional inquiry. All of those ghosts are always fair and balanced. And so if we were to have a congressional inquiry, what did you know and when did you know it? And all the evidence, let's say Jesus was going to plead the fifth. And so he was not going to testify on his own behalf. So the only thing we have is the printed record. If you go with the printed record, all the evidence we've got here is he did not know it. It was revealed later. And so I would say he did not know it until he sat at the right hand of God. And at that point, then he comes to know. Now, possibly you could get into some of the scriptures which talk about all authority has been given unto me. And there's some, probably especially in the Gospel of John, I quoted from the Gospel of Matthew, but in the Gospel of John, you possibly could get an argument to say he knows all things. So somewhere, I think it would be after the resurrection, maybe slightly before the crucifixion. There may be a little piece of evidence that could come there, but nothing from his mouth from that point on would give any indication to those who is listening to him. So I guess, to spin around this thing, in the end, if he knew, he didn't tell about it. And so, there's no benefit to anyone in knowing it. Betty Joe asked about ivermectin for plants. Sometimes I make things up. But I don't know. It's a antiparasitic, isn't it? So maybe a little ivermectin systemically within the plants coming up, on the inside might keep the bugs from eating it. Somebody who's got extra, try it out. Crush up some ivermectin, dissolve it in the water there, see if it helps your African violets. It's worth a try. Ivermectin, I understand, is cheap and this kind of thing, so probably do. Now, it's not FDA approved. I just want you to know that. FDA, well, they wouldn't make any money off of it, and so, of course, it's not approved by the FDA. The crooked FDA. But it's worth a try. It's worth a try. Thanks. Well, thank you, Charles. You really hit the ball out of the park yesterday. Great sermon, the essential gospel. Thanks and God's bless. Did it hit out of the park within? Was it within the? What do you call this? I'm going to show my baseball ignorance. Within the inside of those yellow poles, or did it get out of the foul line? This is what I'm wondering. Deb, what are your thoughts on this article? NASA hopes theologians can answer how humans will react to news that intelligent life exists on other planets. Comes from a New York Post article on 24 theologians hired supposedly by NASA to study the reaction. There seems to be a lot of talk of aliens lately. Yes, I know this isn't the Theological Insomniac show. That's okay. It fits here. It's a worldview question, and it's certainly about theology and biblical, theological, and worldview questions. And so I have seen postings of the article. For whatever reason, I never have clicked on one. It's probably just more timing than anything else on clicking on that. But why? First of all, let me say I am not. I'm not all that convinced that they would get good theologians in doing it. Now, here, I just pulled one up. This is from the republicworld.com. I have no idea what that website is, if it's good, bad, or whatever. Reverend Andrew Davidson, a priest and theologian at the University of Cambridge, is among 24 theologians who have taken part in the program. This must be British because it spells it like Russell would. Reported the Daily Mail. U.S. Space Agency NASA hired a British priest in a bid to understand how the discovery of extraterrestrials would change the way we see the universe. And as per CTI, Center for Technological Inquiry at Princeton, described it as building bridges of understanding by convening theologians, scientists, scholars, and policymakers to think together and inform public policy on global concerns. You know, here, I tell you what my fear would be on this, to inform, building bridges of understanding. Theologians are easy to be duped. I suppose a lot of people are. And I would not be surprised if NASA did hire them, which I guess let's take that as true. We should question that assumption. Did this ever really happen? Well, I read it on the internet. Yeah, okay, but did it really happen? Let's take it as true, and suppose the articles certainly have gone around, so let's take it as true. It would be so easy of NASA, without stating what they're doing, to tell them what they want the theologians to say, and then have the theologians say that. And this would not be, what should we call it, like a peer-reviewed kind of study. And did they hire people like who's the guy at ICR, something of Creation Institute of Creation Research? The guy there, is it Gary Bates that wrote Alien Intrusion? He is a well-known author on aliens, theological, scientific author. Did they hire guys like him? It's not that, we didn't know about this guy. He's got a best-selling book, Alien Intrusion. He had a movie based upon the book. If you look up, aliens and Christianity, he's probably going to come into the list. So I would want to see who they hired. Okay, so I don't know this guy that is mentioned here, Reverend Andrew Davidson. Does Reverend Andrew Davidson have any kind of background in this, any kind of study? If not, it's easy to plant the idea in his mind on what we want you to say. Even if you just sort of design some hypothetical, some theoretical, you place that in the mind, and you know how I mean, I've been duped that way, and you've been duped that way. It's a very easy thing. But you take a guy like the author of Alien Intrusion, who is well studied on the issue, and he's been in debates about it, and he's had people come at every different direction from it. This guy would be able to turn. I wouldn't be able to. I haven't studied enough on it to know. Now, if I was invited to the meeting, if I was one of the 24 theologians, then you better bet I would have done my homework well before I got to the meeting, so that when some premise was delivered out there, I would be able to say, stop the presses. Wait a minute. You just put down an assumption that I'm not willing to accept. Now, is there enough of that? I see Linda says, and I'm gonna take Linda's word for it. These theologians are Catholics. Are they all Catholics? Or are they all, again, if you put, let's assume that the people at NASA are not really the church-going type. So they get theologians. Well, the people they're going to get are going to be Catholics and Anglicans, for the most part, Catholics and Anglicans. Well, Catholics especially have sort of a love affair with mystical things. And so their Catholic theology is going to twist a little bit. There are, I want to say this carefully. I'll say it this way, and then I'll put some disclaimers. There are some good Catholic theologians. Now, by good, their theology is Catholic, which is inherently bad. But there are some theologians that really put a lot of effort into putting together their Catholic theology. Is this Reverend Andrew Davidson and some of these that are brought about? It almost looks to me like NASA's trying to get a little ahead of the curve on this one. And maybe NASA has an agenda, a government agency with an agenda. I shouldn't have even said such a crazy thought. Maybe NASA has an agenda. They're going to get ahead on getting this agenda, this thought, this fear out to the masses. And so they handpick some theologians who come at it. I haven't seen any kind of a report that they have, or what they were brought about. Here's a guy in the comments who says this is old news. The program began in 2015 and ended in 2018. It's defunct for almost 4 years. Your site completely fails to mention. I don't know if this Reagan guy, it's not a bad name, but maybe it's Regan, R-E-G-A-N. I don't know if he knows what he's talking about, or sometimes fake news just gets a hold of things and runs with it. Linda has another good comment here. The Catholics have been looking for UFOs for probably 20 years. I think NASA started asking them stuff a few years ago, according to some FOIA reports from the Black Vault, Freedom of Information Act. I think that if I wanted to promote an agenda of aliens, I would, the Catholic theologians would be the place to go. And probably some Anglican theologians, just to make it look, ecumenical. Need a few ice cubes in your palm. It actually says psalm there, but I think you meant palm. You're talking about this one. Some of you, the sad. Speaking of COVID implants. These got him. You notice this one's dead. It died a number of weeks ago. Nancy was here and killed it. She actually tried to replant here. It's not not yet coming back. You can't see it there. I'm still watering it just in case it gets a shoot over here. This one got real sickly. It's looking a little better, but I'm afraid I'm just going to have to replace the plants. They've been here for two or 3 years, and they don't get a lot of tender loving care. And furthermore, there's no light in here. So there's a little grow light up there that turns on at night, and that sort of keeps them. But I think it's probably time for some new palms. So we're gonna check that out. Rudy in Belgium. Question related to Genesis chapter 20, verse 16. Would you explain this verse? Especially, he is to thee a covering of the eyes. And unto Sarah he said, behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes unto all that are with thee, and with all the other. Thus she was reproved. So Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. This was, am I not mistaken, this was one of the occasions in which Abraham lied about Sarah. So what is this? He is, again right here, behold, he is unto thee a covering of the eyes. Let's do a couple of things to see if we can figure this out. Young's literal, it is to thee a covering of the eyes, basically the same thing. I think that we would have to say immediately, this is some kind of a metaphor, Hebraism, something that doesn't mean he covers your eyes. He is a covering for that. So what is the meaning? We take the Bible literally, unless if the plain sense makes common sense, we'll seek no other sense. But the plain sense doesn't make common sense here. He's a covering for their eyes. That's got to signify something. So what is it? Okay. We've checked the Young's literal and the English and the King James. Looks like there's not really a textual issue there. Let's check the King James cross reference, and it has Genesis 24:65. For she had said unto the servant, what man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant said, it is my master. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself. Now, the question we have is there any connection there where she takes a veil and covers herself? He is to thee a covering for thine eyes. Do we have some kind of a cultural thing here where this woman without her man, this may tie into 1 Corinthians chapter, is it 11 that has the discussion about the woman's head covering? Is there a Hebraism here that's talking about the need for the woman to be under the covering of her husband, especially in dealing with other men? And that he is the one that you're under his authority, you're under his protection. Does it mean something along those lines? Okay, let's do two other things. Let's go to Bollinger here and see a covering. Okay, he does call it a figure of speech. We'll go into what it is in a moment. Having called Abraham her brother, he uses this beautiful figure for her husband. Compare 24:65. That's where we were. 1 Corinthians 11:5, which is what I mentioned a moment ago. He seems to go in that direction as well. Now, he says, and let me enlarge this just a little bit here. He says this is a figure of speech, a periphrasis. Periphrasis is when a description is used instead of the name. Okay, a description instead of the name. Well, we guessed that much already, didn't we? We just want to know what the name of this thing is. So I think the next thing to do is we work our way through here is to go to Chabad.org. And let's see, in the book of Genesis, chapter, where were we? Chapter 20, verse 16. Let's turn on Rashi's commentary, bring that up to size a little bit, and get down to verse 16, see if he gives us some help. Rashi, by the way, is a Middle Ages Jewish commentator, probably the most famous Jewish rabbi commentator there was. Doesn't always have it right, but he gives us some insight into what Jews are thinking on it, which is often somewhat helpful. Okay. His translation first, and to Sarah he said, "Behold, I have given thee 1,000 pieces of silver to your brother. Behold, it is to you a covering of the eyes for all who are with you, and with all you shall contend." Now, they will cover their eyes so that they will not denigrate you. For had I returned you empty-handed, they could say, after he violated her, he returned her. Now that I have to spend so much money to appease you, they will know that against my will I returned you through a miracle. Now that's an interesting little deal. Is Rashi takes a covering of the eyes to be this is going to prove your innocence. This 1,000 pieces of silver given to your brother is going to prove that I am not sending you home in shame. In that sense, they will cover their eyes. They will not denigrate you. Maybe this not denigrate you. Let's try that. It will be that which protects you from being denigrated, with all who are with you, and with all you shall contend. Now, the contend part probably helps along with that. He says, with all the people in the world, you shall contend, you shall have opportunity to contend and to show these evident facts wherever the word, and it's got a Hebrew word there, appears. It refers to the clarification of matters. That's probably the word contend. The clarification matters. In Old French, esprouver, to prove or to clarify. That is a prover down below. Okay. On Kelas, another rabbi, translated it in a different manner. In the language, the verse fills in with the Targum in the following manner: "Behold, it will be for you a covering of honor on account of my eyes, which gazed upon you and upon all who are with you." Therefore, he translated it, "I saw you and all who are with you." There is a midrashic interpretation, but I've explained what fits in the language of the verse. Okay. A covering of honor, a covering to avoid denigration. I think if we were to continue to push that through and try to figure out what this is, I think that the best sources here are probably going to be Jewish commentators. There's nothing in here that's going to be messianic. And that's usually the place where if you get a Jewish commentator that really is one that sticks to the text and doesn't come up with too much mystical stuff, doesn't try to apply it, they haven't been bit by the evangelical bug, you get a solid Jewish commentator, they're going to go into more of the Hebraisms and just sort of give you. And I would guess that it's going to become somewhere pretty close to what Rashi says here, is that this is some sort of a covering of shame. You're going to go back, people are going to hear, they're going to talk, you're going to show them this ticket which says you should be embarrassed. You should look down in shame. I think it's probably in those areas. Now, that is one of those that's not ever going to be just cut and dried in the Hebrew Scripture, so there may be some room to interpret there. Obviously, let's take the Hebrew term, the covering of the eyes. Let's take these two Hebrew words, just those Hebrew words, and see if they're anywhere else in the Scripture. They're not. Okay, only in Genesis chapter 20, verse 16, do we see that exact phrase, which means the cross-references there are going to be questionable. Let's go ahead and look at one other thing while I got you on the line, Rudy. Let's look at treasury scripture knowledge, Genesis chapter 20, verse 16. He speaks of the 1,000. What these pieces were is not certain, but it's probable that they were shekels, as it is so understood by the Targum, that's Jewish commentaries. And the LXX, that's the Septuagint, renders it didrachma, by which Hebrew shekel is rendered. Behold, it, the 1,000 shekels, is to thee, and etc., a covering. And again, it just goes to Genesis 24:65. Therefore took a veil and covered herself. I am not sure that I would put that much credibility to that cross-reference of Genesis 24:65. Maybe you could, but all you've got is she covered herself. This is that somehow this $1,000 covers other people's eyes. I would take it somehow, whether good or bad, and I don't know the intent here, but whether good or bad, I would take it as what do we sometimes say in English? I think we do. It's cover-up money. Somewhere it's connected to this 1,000 pieces of silver is the cover-up. Now, it appears that she's not ashamed to take this. Not that it's a payoff, but that it really does vindicate her. So, and when we talk about cover up money, or whatever the term is we have for that, it's probably always in a negative fashion. I think this one might not be in such a negative fashion. It may be in more of a positive fashion. Thanks, Rudy. I appreciate your good question. Bev up in St. Croix County, Wisconsin. NASA and DARPA were both founded after Nazi scientists came to the U.S. after the Second World War. Any wonder things are moving in that direction. This is I'm not immediately familiar with that, but I suspect you're right. Maybe even the scientists may have come within or before World War II. And the reason I say that is because Los Alamos, right over here, my neighbor, that developed the bomb that ended up going on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were made by German scientists, and mostly Jews that Germany didn't want. They got out in time, and the Jews ended up killing the Nazis. Now, could it be that Nazi scientists actually worked for Nazis and maybe held some Nazi views, came in and put some seedbed of thought in there? It's a possibility. I'm not aware of it, but it is very much a possibility. The problem with space exploration from a NASA point of view is that NASA is a secular organization dealing with the exploration that gets into the religious every time. For example, this James Webb telescope, it's going up to look at the origins of life. It's going up to look to see how, the world was created. Well, that becomes a religious question. And I don't know that NASA has consulted theologians to say, how are people going to take it if we come and say, well, there's a big bang that took place 80 billion years ago. How are they going to take it? They don't on that one bring the theologians in, but these things do become theological. Almost any study of of physics, of the natural world, becomes a religious question in part, which was a blessing back in the days when science was funded by the church and it was done with a biblical worldview. Makes a big difference. The farther we get from a biblical worldview in Western society, the more NASA is just going to need to use religion in order to propagate its godless agenda. Should we expect to see an alien someday? Not what we would call intelligent life. I am convinced that all of this universe really does come and center on God, who's the God of the entire universe, said, let us make man in our own image. Every understanding of the Bible would be this: we, mankind, are the only creature made in God's image. Now, that said, could God have put some kind of life on other planets? He could have. You might be able to argue, well, actually, a plain reading of Genesis seems to say this: he created the stars, they have their purpose. The planets, they have their purpose. And that all of that is just a balancing factor for the world that we live in to be the place of life. And here is where he placed life. I think it's not out of the question that we will never find life anywhere. I think it is definitely out of the question that we will find intelligent, moral life. Now, if they tell me they find some kind of an amoeba on, planet X, or even a fish or a bird or a crawling, creeping thing, that'd be interesting. Would not shake my faith at all. But something in a spaceship out there? No, I don't think we're going to see them now. I have not really followed about mass formation psychosis. I think that's the phrase that gets you kicked off YouTube. But this the mass formation psychosis, if I'm even using it right, has been going for so long that the public really expects to see an alien someday. And War of the Worlds, and that was what was that in the 1920s, 1930s? And they were expecting, in that day it was Martians. There's going to be Martians. This idea that someday the aliens are going to come. It's E.T., it's Star Trek. It has so been injected into our collective thinking that society expects to see an alien someday. And they've been somewhat disappointed that they send all these spaceships out, as far as we could ever send them, and nothing, come up empty-handed. What's up with this? I don't think they're out there. Again, a living creature of some animal sort, maybe, even though I'm going to say probably not, but maybe. An alien like we think that could make rational and moral decisions, no. An alien that could, conquer us. We'd have to go into warfare with us. No, I don't think so. And I would go, Linda mentions an alien demon, in that sense, and probably you take the book of Revelation and those locusts, a 200 million army that comes forth, that they will probably say that's aliens. We know something different, that's demons, and would be there in that category of the demonic. Thanks. So was that Bev that asked that question? Thank you. Edith up in Missouri. A question on Titus chapter 1 verse 4, the common faith. To Titus, mine own son, after the common faith, grace, mercy, and peace. Isn't common faith in Titus 1:4 referring to Paul's grace gospel as referred to in Ephesians 2:18? For through him we both have access by one Spirit into the Father. Now, I should have brought that reference. I commend you, Edith. Thank you, because there certainly here is we both have access. And he's talking in Ephesians chapter 2 there, he's talking about the Jews, the Gentiles, the wall of partition has been brought down. Now we both have access to him. So the common faith would be the one that is common both to Jews and to Gentiles. Now, in that sense, and actually, you've got a very good argument there, and especially when we put in the definite article, the common faith. Now, as you know, when I taught this the other night, I mentioned that it's not actually there in the Greek. So, Titus, my son, after common faith, or after, I think Young's Literal maybe says our common faith. Or maybe Young's Literal says a common faith. New King James says our common faith. There's a little question on, is it after common faith, after the common faith, after a common faith, after our common faith? You almost have to put something in there, and it's not a matter of how do you interpret it? It's a matter of how do you get it from Greek into English. And it's one of these things where the English doesn't match the Greek. The rules of English don't match the rules of Greek, and so kind of stuck here. There must be interpretation that takes place. Now, it cannot be common in the sense of everyday, the everyday faith. The everyday faith would have to be Judaism. That's the one that, you can read it back here, there you go, wherever. The faith of the Scripture, the most common faith of the Scripture is the Jewish by law faith. This is not what he's talking about here, definitely. Now, I'm not even sure that common kainos, I don't even think that kainos works as common. It's common. It's very common that Randy would, hold up this sign right here. Kainos can't even be used in that way. So it's the shared faith. Now, is he talking about Titus, you and I share this together? Or is he talking about this is the faith that Jews share with Christians? And the faith that Jews, let's say Gentiles, the faith that Jews share with Gentiles is not this kingdom faith. It's actually this individual faith over here. So I think that we would have to take this and say, if we're taking it on an individual level, that we're just talking about Titus and Paul, then it's the common faith between the two of them, which is the gospel of grace. If we're broadening that to faith that is common of all people of the world, that is, this is the only one that we could have in common, that would have to be the gospel of grace. Either way, you're right, Edith, either way, it does boil down to it's the gospel of grace. It's the only one that it can be. Thanks, Edith in Missouri. I appreciate your good question there. And Let's make our way to the Netherlands, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And we've got Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. That's the account of the sons of God coming to the daughters of men, and giants were in the land. It says, combine this with extra biblical verse from the book of, I always struggle with how to say this, Jasher. I'm going to say Jasher. Probably in Hebrew it's Yasher. The book of Jasher 4:18, which says, I quote from Gerard, who quotes from the book of Jasher, their judges and their rulers went to the daughters of men and took their wives by force from the husbands according to their choice. And the sons of men in those days took from the cattle of the earth, the beasts of the field, and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other in order therewith to provoke the Lord. And God saw the whole earth that it was corrupt, for all the flesh had corrupted its ways upon the earth, all men and animals. Now, let me just speak to that briefly before I actually get to the question. It's interesting that the book of Jasher, Yasher, that book, extra biblical, that particular book takes a mixture of humans and animals. In a sense, the same thing. It's a tainting of the DNA. It is messing up the DNA, and this is the problem in both of them. Now, Gerard comes with this question. What we see today in science and pharmaceutical industries, cloning, transhumanism, Gerard mentions, is this not telling us that we are very close to the rapture? Remember that Jesus spoke about the last days. He was speaking post-rapture, I think, and Jesus says, as in the days of Noah, so will it be in the coming of the Son of Man. In the days of Noah, let's take just this specific incident with the sons of God and the daughters of men. I believe that created a race of people who were not fully human DNA. Now, in science and pharmaceutical industries, there is a move, transhumanism, a move to create all humans to be raised above the limitations of humanity through remapping our DNA. It's the same basic principles. It's a different road, a different chapter, a different concept in Genesis to cloning and transhumanism today, but it's the same basic arguments through it all, as in the days of Noah. Now, so far, man has not been terribly successful at this. And the current vaccine, of course, tries to do at least the RNA, and I'm not enough of a scientist to know quite where's DNA and RNA and to explain all that, but certainly comes in the RNA and tries to reprogram the RNA. Now, let me just say, it has done a lousy job. It kills more people than it saves, in my opinion. And if it works at all, barely a little bit, it works barely for a little time. So far, the pharmaceutical industry, science and pharmaceutical industry, is at the point of saying, we can really mess up your RNA to the point that you probably get a lot of other stuff, but maybe for 3 or 4 days or weeks or something like this, you might get a lighter case of it. Maybe you'll get a lighter case of it for a few weeks or a few months. That's the best we can do. So the pharmaceutical industry, which honestly, bunches of that just need to go to jail. Those people need to go to jail. They have it's Nuremberg crimes kind of stuff. And the FDA needs to be shut down, and the CDC needs to be shut down. It was never a part of government to begin with. And people ought to stand up for their constitutional rights. I'm sorry, Gerard's in the Netherlands. I'm not sure what your constitutional rights are there, but here in the United States, we really are protected from government ever doing this. And yet this is exactly what government is doing. And it's a lot worse than the British putting a tiny little tax on tea. We revolted over that one. Now, is the question, is this not telling us we're very close to the rapture? All the signs are we're very close to the rapture. And this is yet another of the signs that we're very close to the rapture. I kind of think that God has said all along, I'm going to let this go as long as there is a hope of more salvation, more people coming to grace, and still the ability to redeem and bring a rebirth to Israel. Now, Israel may be at the cutting edge of all this cloning and transhumanism, which would do the same thing that Genesis chapter 6 did. Genesis chapter 6 was, let's try to make it where God cannot send a redeemer through humanity. Well, he already sent the redeemer, so no sense doing that again. But what if we try to make it where God can't deliver his promises to Israel because Israel is now so tainted that he would be bringing a new birth to those who aren't even human. There's some artificial intelligence kind of controlled bots. I think that all the signs are we're very close to the rapture. Now, a lot of people have been wrong on that, we'll know soon. I need my rapture button, Nathan. Where's that rapture button when I need it? You're right. Checking out our questions here on this Monday. I got a bunch of questions over here. Here I'm waxing eloquent and got all these questions. Nick in Vancouver. I got it right. Our friend Nick in Vancouver. Jesus fulfilled so many predictions from the Old Testament, but does that mean that everything that happens has been foreordained by the Father? My Muslim friends believe that everything was written, and now I get this problem with YouTube, and that is that it cuts off after a certain point. Okay. My Muslim friends believe that everything was written before time. So how does free will fit in? Okay. Jesus did fulfill so many of the predictions of the Old Testament. I think it's a logical fallacy to say because Jesus fulfilled, let's call it 100 prophecies. We could look it up and find out how many it is. Let's call it 100. Because Jesus fulfilled 100 out of 100 prophecies of his first coming, then everything is foreordained. That's one of those. I always use the term, and I should make sure I'm using this term correct. That's a non sequitur. That is, it does not follow. It does not follow that if Jesus fulfilled prophecies about him, that what Randy is to have for lunch today has also been written ahead of time. Now, I think that the one thing that you could do is make that as a premise. Okay, if Jesus's life and ministry was written ahead of time, then, therefore, I suggest that Nick's life and ministry is written out aforetime. Well, then you would have to have some evidence to support your assumption. And it would be like saying, okay, a plane took off from Santa Fe and it landed in Vancouver. Therefore, planes that take off from Santa Fe land in Vancouver. Well, no, they don't. There's a difference there. So I think the Muslims and the Calvinists are together on this, that they believe everything was written in advance, and we're just sort of walking things through. Now, I think some things were written in advance. I think the life and ministry and work of Jesus was written in advance. And some of it is such that Jesus could just know, and he could go and say, okay, I'm supposed to do this. This was written in the prophets. I need to say this. But a lot of things you can't really you can't really plan that. You can't really even with some advanced work get all these things to happen, especially when it comes to the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So I think the problem there they've got is this. Shall we call it a non sequitur? There is something that mankind likes about having everything pre-planned, because it does take free will away, and free will can be problematic. If we don't have free will, I can blame someone else, and it's a little easier just to say, well, God hath ordained. I think even and again, we see this more in Calvinism than around Muslims. I don't live around a lot of Muslims. I used to when I was in the Houston area. There's a lot there, but here, if there's a Muslim here, they're a tourist. So as we look at things here, there's kind of, among Calvinists, which unfortunately there are Calvinists everywhere. Calvinists would like to say, well, the reason things are in such bad shape now is it's the punishment of God. The reason we got such a doofus in the White House is because God placed him there. And I want to say, no, it's voters or cheating at the ballot box. That's why we got him. And it's our job to fix it. I take a free will view of life almost to the core, that in this age of the dispensation of the grace of God, it is a time of the silence of God, in which God has said, I've given you my full revelation, and I made you in my own image. Now live. And if we'll make good decisions according to the scripture, we can live pretty well. If people lived according to biblical values, and if you have a community of that, that's a pretty good community. It used to be the United States. That's a place where there was high prosperity and low crime. And it comes about by free will. I think that Jesus, there are times when God says this is going to happen. The rapture, the second coming, the first coming of Jesus, and so many things about the first coming of Jesus, the restoration of Israel. These are things that God has said, I'm going to inject into this world and I'm going to make this happen. I'm letting you know about it in advance. And I think that there's some, then there's a mistake in saying, okay, everything is like that. Everything is written or planned by God. Scarlett, good to see you. And Scarlett says, why did God create poison ivy? it might be that God didn't. That God created ivy, and I'll go two ways here. God created ivy, and then the curse came, and God then caused that ivy to secrete whatever it is that it secretes. By the way, I don't think I'm susceptible to poison ivy. Only reason I say that is, I've been around people and we're working in the weeds or whatever, and they come out and they're just covered in this rash for 3 days, and I'm fine. I've been enough in the brush where poison ivy grows. It doesn't grow in New Mexico. Because we're not as much under the curse. That I think maybe it's an allergy. So maybe the ivy was there and we just got allergic to it all along. So I think it has to do more with the curse, the danger, the disease that comes about. Now, there's the possibility. I don't think this is true on poison ivy. But there's the possibility that man makes some things. What's the vine that's taking over the South? Kutso? I can't remember the name of it. It was kind of introduced by man. Maybe it came from another place and it was just planted over here. But there's some cloning of plants that turns out not to be a good thing at all. And could it have been that somewhere back there, some scientists said, hey, what if we take this plant and this plant, and we merge them together? Maybe that created poison. Maybe we did it. I don't know that to be true about poison ivy, but I certainly would say it happens in viruses, things like this. So let's make an assumption. If poison ivy existed prior to the fall, I think there's a huge question there. But if it did, then it had a beneficial purpose. Could we find the beneficial purpose? I think of mosquitoes here for just a moment. Mosquitoes, I think the scientific name for a mosquito is Anopheles. The Greek Ophelia means, sometimes there's some ladies, hadn't been in a long time, but ladies named Ophelia. It means beneficial, good, wonderful. Put the A in front of it, or in this case, the A-N in front of it, it negates that. Anopheles is, there's nothing good about it. But mosquitoes would have taken, let's say, fruit and leaves that fall to the ground and caused that to disintegrate. And there was a beneficial purpose because there's no death, but an apple falling to the ground and rotting is not really death. That's a process that takes through of reseeding, the tree reseeding itself. Now, if apples never fell to the ground and rotted, the world would be overcome by apples. So God makes them fall. God makes mosquitoes come and kind of chew them up and get rid of all the stuff. And so they do have some beneficial purpose. If poison ivy is not a result of the curse, then there's some beneficial purpose, and I don't know what it is. But if it's a problem, move to New Mexico again, because we just we don't have it. Let's see. I'm out of time, and I got 2 questions. Alex, our friend in London, watching the program today from Rodney's last disturbing sermon. This is from in Connecticut. I have not listened to it. Everyone in the end will be saved. Quoting Thomas, Paul believed only when they saw. So at the resurrection, all believers will see and be saved. Can you do a standalone study on universalism? Okay, so he appears to be saying that when people see, they will be saved. You know, what is it in the Gospel of John? It's John chapter 6, and Jesus said, let's see if I can narrow this down in a very broad search. I'm pretty sure it's John chapter 6. But maybe not. Where did Jesus say that it's God's will that everyone who sees, it's one of these Calvinist passages like John chapter 6. Everyone who sees will believe. This is God's will. But very clearly the implication of the passage is not everybody who saw Jesus Christ is going to believe. I think that would go against the premise that everybody who sees believes. You know, why didn't everybody who saw Jesus believe? I don't think that everybody who saw the resurrected Jesus believed. So, you know, what's the premise there? I may go back and see if I can find that sermon and listen to that, and I may do a standalone study on universalism, because it's kind of a growing thing, and it's a popular thing from time to time. It has its comings and goings on how do you build a universalist argument, and you can. There's a few places you can take scriptures out of context and you can build a universalist argument. You almost end up having to get into a purgatory, because people die, they didn't believe, but later when they resurrected, they're going to, and then you've got to do something with the great white throne judgment and the rest of the dead who are not in the Lamb's Book of Life. Seems like such an uphill battle to me. Like Debbie says, kudzu. Did I get it right? Kudzu. And Cliff, kudzu. Okay, so it's an uphill battle. Get rid of the kudzu. It's an uphill battle to build an argument of universalism that works. You just got too much going against it in there. But we kind of want it to work. I mean, we're mean, but we don't want people to die and go to hell forever. Just for a little short time is all we want. So we sort of want this. In the end, everything comes out perfect. Sometimes our desires can be so overwhelming that we can start reading them into Scripture. I'm going to check that out. Thanks for that. And last of the day, a wraparound, come back to Nick in Vancouver, clarification. I mean, how do I explain to Muslims that we have free will when I'm also showing them that Jesus fulfilled prophecy? That is okay. You do have a good, not that they're making the connection, but here you are in the connection. How do we show free will? I think, and I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. I think that sometimes we try to get one argument ahead of itself, and maybe the argument on free will is one that we can't win at that point with the Muslim. So if we are going through and saying, okay, now Jesus fulfilled all these 100 prophecies, and fulfilling these 100 prophecies, it aligns perfectly with our Bible that said he was going to fulfill these. Now, from that, would you give some credibility to the Scripture? If we can get them to give some credibility to the Scripture, then we could probably use the Scripture to say Now let's look at man. What's the doctrine of man? Or if we can't get them to that point, at least could we get them to the point of saying, let's take the theology of anthropology, the doctrine of man. Let's lay the doctrine of man for Muslims right here, and the doctrine of man for Christians right here. I don't totally know what the doctrine of man is for Muslims, by the way. I know what a biblical doctrine of man is for Christians, although there's a lot of mistaken ideas in that too, thanks to Calvinism mostly, and Catholicism. Same thing. So with laying those two aside, then could we say, okay, let's point out where is the conflict between these two doctrines. Let's then take those areas and say, let's use observation, let's use revelation that we've got. And in this case, you would have to set the Bibles alongside the Quran and put that together and say, okay, from revelation, what do we have? From observation, what do we have? And put those together and try to lead the Muslim then to say, okay, Christianity and the Muslim faith, biblical Christianity and the Muslim faith have two very different doctrines on man. So with those very different doctrines on man, what does observation tell us? What does my experience tell us? That's a little anecdotal, but nonetheless, I think our experience, anyone's got family members that, I don't know, are raised in a godly home and they're not godly anymore. Was that, did Allah or God really write that out in advance? Is this the kind of God there is, or the kind of Allah there is? To deal with some of that on a logical basis, assuming that you've got a logical Muslim that has an openness to it, that probably would be the place to go on it. Hopefully, it's a tough deal, and I think with a Muslim, probably if you got a Muslim who's a friend. And living in Vancouver, you very likely do. Excuse me, was that Nick or was that Alex? Yeah, that was Alex. No doubt does as well, being from India and living in London, and again, places where there are a lot more Muslims than there are here. You get Muslim friends, and there really is a power to hospitality and a power to prayer that goes a long way into getting them to that point to sit down. Probably right off the bat, you don't necessarily get there. Okay. Thanks for being here. I hope I got all the questions here today on this Monday. I think I did. Very delighted to have you here. We'll be on all week and Ask the Theologian, and then on our Wednesday night study and our Thursday night study, and back next Sunday. And look forward to that. I'll give you some updates on the book as we go along, and we will just have a great time together this week. Randy White Ministries.